Hello everyone, today I want to share my Shinobu builds and team compositions in this short guide. As always, I start with the build, and then go over team compositions and show some Abyss gameplay at the end.
Animal Module 75, decided by destiny. Let me scribe. Out of my way!
Shinobu's ideal stat line is a little harder to figure out because of her damage bonus scaling from Elemental Mastery. I think a safe way to do it is just to go for a kind of quality build with equal distribution between your damage stats, as opposed to just focusing on Elemental Mastery or just focusing on crit damage. She is HP scaling, so you obviously want HP. She is an electro character, so obviously electro damage bonus. And then I'd say about 200 to 300 elemental mastery and as much crit damage as you can get while maintaining a good balance with crit rate. As for energy recharge, I don't think she needs as much. If you just play her as a Eula synergy, for example, you mainly play her for her elemental skill, and if you play her in a more quick swapped style team, you generate a lot of energy in these teams anyway. As for talents, the Elemental Burst skill as her main source of damage should be your highest priority. You can choose to level up the Elemental skill, but honestly the damage on this isn't very impressive, so if you choose to level it up, it's mainly for extra healing. And you can definitely ignore the normal attacks. Her constellations honestly aren't too impressive. Constellation 1 increases the effect area of the Elemental Burst skill, Constellation 2 increases the uptime of the Elemental skill, and Constellation 4 and 6 are both basically just damage increases, and Constellation 6 also has a cheat death mechanic which allows Shinobu to survive one hit that would otherwise kill her once every 60 seconds. As for weapon options, I really like the Iron Sting, which is craftable, so very accessible, and Shinobu is an HP scaling character, so she doesn't really care about base attack. So you want a high secondary stat, Elemental Mastery obviously benefits her a lot, and this effect is also quite decent. I don't think it can trigger off-field by her elemental skill, but the 6-second uptime are obviously enough to benefit her elemental burst skill. Otherwise, you're looking at weapons with like crit rate or crit damage. So if you're thinking about the Harbinger of Dawn, the 3-star weapon with the effect that increases your crit rate, unfortunately this is not a good choice on Shinobu because she is rarely above 90% HP. So you're looking mainly at the Battle Pass weapon or the Paimon Shop weapons. If you really wanted, you could pick up a Favonius sword if you feel like you need energy recharge. As for artifacts, we already covered substats earlier. As for main stats, it's likely HP percentage in this slot. If you're struggling for some elemental mastery, you can consider going this instead. In this slot, always electro damage bonus, and in the last one, crit rate or crit damage, whichever one balances your stats better. As for the sets, it's a healer, so as usual, the noblesse set to increase your party's attack would be great. Alternatively, for Shinobu, also the 4-piece Millilith set would work as well. If you don't run a party that needs an attack buff, you can also consider going a more sub-DPS route with a 2-piece Noblesse set and paired with any stats Shinobu can make use of, like 2-piece Thundering Fury, 2-piece Wondrous Troop, or 2-piece Millilith. As for team compositions, Shinobu is obviously a healer, so if that's all you expect her to do, you can pretty much use her in any team composition. Otherwise, Shinobu has obviously very high elemental mastery, so you kind of want to put that to good use by enabling elemental reactions. But before that, obviously, speaking of elemental mastery, you can obviously count in Sucrose, who has incredible synergy with Shinobu to increase her elemental mastery, but also decrease elemental resistances, which is obviously good for electro characters. And speaking of elemental reactions, you obviously mainly want Hydro characters for electrocharged or Pyro characters for overload. So you can pick something like Zhangling and, for example, Raiden, and you have kind of a weird national team going on here. Same thing with Jingzhou if you want the Hydro character. Aside from this, you can obviously also replace Raiden with any other main DPS of the aforementioned elements. So in case of Hydro, obviously something like Ayato or Child. Obviously, they need to have kind of high application rates. So in case of Pyro, it would be something like Klee, Yoimiya, or Yanfei. Aside from this, if you wanted to play Shinobu effectively, you obviously want to pair her with characters that don't benefit from attack increases. Because, let's be honest, otherwise you would just play Bennett. So something like this defense scaling team, for example, obviously these two characters don't get too much benefit from a Bennett. Ito would get a little bit, but it's not as bad as if you would play an attack scaling character. Aside from this, we also have HP scaling characters like, for example, Yelan and I guess Kokomi, but honestly, we don't really have enough of these characters to make Shinobu a worthwhile pick over Bennett. And the last team I want to highlight would be this Eula team with Shinobu as a superconduct enabler and healer, which is obviously really great because the main Eula synergies would be something like Raiden and Bennett, and you leave these two open for your Abyss team to play something like the national team, and in your second team you still can play Eula with Shinobu to enable superconduct and have two very flexible last support slots. For example, you can still play Zhongli to decrease the physical resistance, and something like Rosaria to battery your Eula and also get more crit chance, and if you have Constellation 6, also decrease physical resistance. And now for the showcase. Shinobu is actually pretty easy to use. You just want to keep up your elemental skill as much as possible and press your burst skill whenever you want to deal some decent burst damage and trigger some elemental reactions. So for now, let's just increase the burst damage with Raiden. Apply some Electro, increase the elemental mastery with Sucrose, and then set up Mona's burst skill and her elemental skill to trigger some reactions, and then just use Shinobu. And it deals some pretty decent damage, like I said, pretty easy also. And for now I'm gonna leave you with some Abyss gameplay and come back at the end of the video. And this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the kind of Eula B team. With this you still have Raiden and Bennett available in the second half of this Abyss run.
Beg for mercy. Flood of frost. More speed. Stand with me.
Stabilize.
Shudder. Out of my way. Judgment. Lights out. Crush. Vengeance will be mine. Eye for an eye. Shudder. You can't run. Beg for mercy.
Order guide you.
Judgment. Punishment. Freeze to the core. More speed. You can't run. Crush. Rack and ruin.
Alright, we made it to the end. I hope this was somewhat inspiring for your own bits. Stay tuned for more videos. Until then, have fun and bye bye.